Well, now to our, I've been anticipating this very much, having William Mitchell. I met him at the last Business Association meeting, and I think that he has much to offer to us tonight. I think it's a time for us to all listen and become educated, how we can grow and change. He's very involved he's a business owner here in the Pearl. He lives in the Pearl. And he's spoken to the Salem legislators, including Governor Brown and the Portland Public Schools and universities, as well as nonprofit organizations. And he's speaking us tonight. William, can you unmute yourself? And I'm going to let you introduce whatever else you would like to do to introduce yourself. You just feel free to do that.
Got you. Hello, everyone. It's good to be here. It's good to see you. Yeah, everybody wave their hands if you hear me. I love that. I love that. Thank you. I've been a long-time member of the Pearl District, resident. I moved to the Pearl in 2001. Started in the building that Keene now has and have been an Irving Street loft resident since 2006. And I love it here. I also have a place in Seattle. I move back and forth quite a bit, and that kind of ties into my story, which I'll share with you. I don't know how much time we have, but we're talking about a pretty significant subject here. And this subject can go in so many directions, so easily. And it really comes down to one thing. That one thing is knowing who you are. We can have conversations all day long about the causes of racism, the challenges that we see as individuals. But until we start looking at ourselves, we'll never understand any of that. So what I'm going to do tonight, I'm just going to share a little perspective from my point of view, being pretty much born and raised in the Pacific Northwest. I know this city very well. My parents were in the Vanport flood. Do any of you know anything about the Vanport flood?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. My parents were in that. My father's from Kansas City. My mother's from Oklahoma. Came out here the 40s. As you look at me, you could tell that I was the baby of the family, right? Yeah. Have been here a long time. Father is a pastor. My father was the first Black car salesman in Oregon. And if you don't know the significance of that, what that meant, you probably don't know a lot about Oregon. But let me tell you, it's, my story is real simple. Born in Portland, very early age, we moved to Tacoma, Washington. Finished school, came back to Portland in the 80s. Shortly after school, worked for Freightliner, worked for a copier company, and then decided to start my own business, which is Merchant Concepts, which we're celebrating our 20th year. So it's been a very good experience. With that, when we talk about Portland, we talk about a Black perspective. I haven't talked to any Black person that lives in Portland and has lived in other cities and moved to Portland that cannot instantly identify a uniqueness to Portland, a uniqueness to its culture, a uniqueness to its whiteness, a uniqueness to the feel that you get when you're here. And I use the word uniqueness because that's not good or bad. It's a distinction. It's what you see. It's what you feel. It's what you experience. And as we go through all of these challenges over the last few months, I'm getting all this feedback from different voices from all over, every side of the aisle. You can't be in business for 20 years doing business to business with high-level corporate executives and not get real information, not get true feedback as to what's going on. You can't live in the streets. I grew up in the area of Tacoma that was all Black, start to finish, all Black high school, all Black grade school, until I was transferred to an all-white school, which I actually became the student body president of this white school, and I loved it. But I can tell you stories, and I can give you layers as to how all that came to be. But with a little bit of time that I have, we're really, I think the conversation tonight is about the Black perspective in Portland. For the first time in history, across the country, we've seen people either awaken or come to the conclusion that we have to do something about this. This problem is real. It's easy not to see the problem, depending upon one's perspective, one's environment, where one has grown up, what they experience. It's so easy for us to be in our shell, and that shell could be so comfortable that that's just where we live. And then we hear all of these things that are going on in the world, and all of a sudden, is that true? Does that happen? I've never seen that. I don't experience that. It's true. I'm here to tell you it's true. If I had 100 Black men and 100 white men side by side, and I asked, how many Black men have been stopped by the police without cause? Without cause. I, amongst probably 99% of the Black men, would raise their hand. I've been stopped 3 times without cause. One was on 205. I was coming from Vancouver, going back to Portland in a brand new car. I've always had new cars. Police drives by me. I'm going 55 miles an hour. I'm really within the speed limit. He pulls me over. I asked him, and this was not that long ago. I know who I am. I wasn't really concerned. I know I hadn't done anything wrong. But I was like real curious, why are you pulling me over? Do you know what he said? He said, because you didn't acknowledge me. Guys, this is not that long ago. This was probably, I want to say maybe 7 years ago. I looked at him and I said, well, you know who I am going to acknowledge? Your boss, because I know your boss. And I know your boss's boss. And I think I understand what's going on here. So I'm going to give you one opportunity. And I could do that because of what I've done and who I know. But there's a lot of Black men that would not only get upset, but would be ready to go at him, which is what he wanted. Guys, this is our reality on a daily basis. Make no mistake, there are different worlds. Now, let's put this in different perspectives. Different parts of the country has different cultures based on how that particular culture has evolved. As we all know, the South is different than the East Coast. East Coast is totally different than the West Coast. West Coast is actually different than the Pacific Northwest. Oregon has one of the longest standing and most racist past of most of these cities. Did you know that? Oregon, where we are right here. I talk about the significance of my father being the first Black car salesman. We're talking in the 50s. In the 50s, Blacks can only live in certain areas. Very few Blacks could get certain jobs, consistently redlined. Titles would not allow you to sell to a person of color. Guys, we're talking 1 or 2 generations back, right? We're talking right when I was coming into this world. So think about that. Now think about one of the widest areas and think about some of the strongest laws. We are, whether we like it or not, we're a product of our environment. Doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means that this is where I've been. My lifestyle is in alignment with what this environment represents and it's comfortable. Therefore, I'm going to make the best of it. And a lot of people love it here because it's a very easy environment. But because it's easy doesn't mean that there's not a lack of awareness, a lack of knowing, a lack of understanding who my neighbors are, a lack of understanding who are my coworkers, who are they really? I see surface all day long, but do I really know them? And is there an incentive to? So for the first time in a lot of people's lives, they've been inundated with some realities that they didn't know existed, or they didn't have to because their lifestyle just didn't make it necessary. So now all of a sudden we're seeing things, and we're seeing more hate than we ever did from all over. We're seeing just a resurgence of negativity. And it's almost been like this culmination of leadership and world conditions and COVID-19 and race relations, and it's all coming to a head. It just is. So what are we gonna do about this? You know, I can go back, and I talked about being in both types of school systems. I've been in all white and I've been in all black. And there's no question of distinction. It's such a distinction. That distinction doesn't make it bad. It just makes it different. So, you know, I was fortunate as in my middle school, junior high, that when we were transferred, I was very upset. Didn't want to leave my friends from the hood, Hilltop, Tacoma, Washington. I did not want to do that. But I went to this little place in northeast Tacoma. It was Galt Junior High. There was probably 5-10% black. But we're talking, a lot of you guys don't know what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about the 70s, all right? So for you youngsters, you might not relate to that world, but that world was not an uncool world. We had a good time. And for whatever reason, even though there were segments of challenges and issues, it didn't really affect me. It just didn't. And I think about that, and I think about, why do certain things affect different people differently? Why is it that I see people that might display a racist behavior that I react differently than someone that might not? Well, there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, I have had a strong background. I've had great parents. I've had balance in my life that allows me to see people from various perspectives, which has allowed me to communicate and get to know the person based on who they are, not what they do. I'm not basing you on a rant. I'm not looking at you based on that first impression. Even though that has merit, I'm gonna give you an opportunity, if you're a fool, to recover. I want you to be able to do that. We all say stupid things at stupid times, and a lot of people are being persecuted for that. Yeah, it could be a consequence of who you are, but it could also be a consequence of the circumstances that you're living in at that particular time. So having awareness of people, having awareness of yourself is the first step to making a difference. As I said earlier, Portland is a very, very white town. That doesn't make it a bad town. It just makes it, well, a lot of who I am and who my people are is limited, because we can't get together and do the things that maybe you could do. There's not a variety of options. So you become somewhat part of the social construct, and that's not a bad thing, until you go to a city like New York or LA or Chicago or Atlanta, And you start to see such a difference. And I said, all those are far apart. Tacoma, Washington, totally different cultural phenomenon up there than here. Totally different. And so, again, all that means is that different places have different challenges. Right now, we're at a place where we have to accept this new reality. We have to accept the reality when it comes to how we live our lives on a day-to-day basis, and that's COVID related. We have to have a new perspective on who we're being and the people that we know that are being challenged with this new conversation called race. It's time to pay attention. And I am here to say that if one chooses not to pay attention, that one is part of the problem. It's just that simple. There's no two ways about it. So either you're aware, and awareness doesn't mean that all of a sudden you have to change who you are. Do I have to think that? No, it's not changing who you are. It's understanding who you are and how that plays itself out in your various environments. Who are you being when you're around friends that are a little bit on the edge versus friends that aren't? We all have them. I have them, and I know all of you do. We have people in our circle that can be a little bit far to the left or far to the right, where it makes us a little uncomfortable. Well, I made it a point in my life not to allow that to happen, right? It's like, if you say something that is wrong, that I disagree with, it's not that I'm going to attack you for it, but I'm absolutely, without question, will challenge. Where did that thought come from? Because if it's misunderstood, if it's based on something that is false, something that you heard, something that you learned somewhere, okay, when we have an opportunity to correct that, I can enlighten you and help you maybe understand that perspective. I have a little story. It's funny. When I came back, I was working for ABM. No, I was working for Freightliner, and I sold Yellow Page ads. I don't know if you remember when Pacific Northwest Bell, when it was diverse, they broke it all up, right? And they had all the little different companies pop up. Oh, long story short, I worked for one of these companies. And this is just one of many events. It's just so funny. But it's one of many events that a guy was out on Foster Road, had a ranch, I think back at the time, horse farm. And I was the first person, this is Portland, Oregon, right? Like 92nd Foster somewhere. I was the first Black person that this white man had ever seen in his life. And he said, man, I kind of like you. I said, well, I kind of like you too. He said, but you don't know. I swear I thought all Black men looked like were Huggy Bear. Now, I don't know if any of y'all know who Huggy Bear is, but Huggy Bear was this pimp character on Starsky and Hutch, a show back in the 70s. And they portrayed, funny, isn't it? Those that don't know, they portrayed a very unique and identifiable perspective to what a Black man was, who he was, what he represented. And it's funny, think about this though. He was very genuine because that was his only reference. That was all he had known. I did not take that offensively. I took that as he didn't know what he didn't know. He wasn't mean about it. He just said he didn't know. And that's what he thought. So I really blew his mind that here is this professional guy in a suit talking intelligent, talking about things that could enlighten and help his business. And he, by the way, became a client. But it shocked him. Well, if we really look at ourselves, we all have those things in our life. We all have those perceptions. We have those things that we think a group represents. there's a lot of things on the news that comes down from the top that just enforces that I'm going to put you in a category if you're rich. I'm going to put you in a category if you're poor, if you're white, if you're black, if you're Hispanic, if you're Asian, if you're Russian. And we want to drop everyone in a bucket. That's what we want to do. And that's our first level of reference. Not only is it our first level, but we often act on it. We act on it based on our fears, based on our circumstances. And when we act on that, when we act on false information, we all lose. We all lose. So know that when people come to Portland, when Black people come to Portland, they look at this as, wow, this is different. It's very different. It has this liberal twist. It has this weirdness. It has this uniqueness. But it also has this ignorance. It has this ignorance where people really don't know what's going on outside this little community. It just is that way. Any of you, I heard someone said that they were from the East Coast. If you're from the East Coast, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're from any big city, you know that the cultural distinction is more prevalent, that you understand and actually appreciate more groups. Doesn't mean that you can't live in your world the way you want to, but you at least understand more about the various cultures because they're in your world every day. We need to get that here. I can't tell you, and I don't know if this scares you or not, but culture will enrich your life. Learning the differences in people, it'll make you a better person. The only reason that it wouldn't is if it's founded on fear, if it's founded on a racist attitude or a prejudiced attitude. And those are differences. They're different. You know, you can be a racist and that's pretty extreme. That's, you know, I hate anybody that's not white or whatever. You can be any color or ethnic group and be racist. But most people are prejudiced. Most people prejudge. It's just sad. It's just our nature. We do. That's how we're built. But it takes another level of consciousness to understand how you think and to provide an opportunity for that person to allow you to think different. That's the difference right there. Who are you being? How do you feel when you're around a group that you know nothing about? Are you comfortable or are you not? If you're not, it might be more them than you. It just might be. You want to think about that. You want to pay attention. Who am I being? Am I being honest? Am I being genuine? Do I have the perspective of what's really in front of me? Am I in the now? Am I conscious to what's happening right now? Instead of putting circumstances, words, people in categories. We tend to do that. I'm going to drop you here. You know, when Adam Schiff came to Portland, I don't know if any of you might have been there, there was a meeting in the Pearl. He came down and he talked to a group of Democrats, and I was invited down there. And I talked to them, and it was great. It was a great time. But it was very interesting because, you know, one of the ladies came up because, you know, there was the topic of race relations, and she asked me the question. She said, you know, is that true? They say that Black men really get stopped on streets for no reason. She said, is that really true? And this lady must have been late 60s, early 70s. Genuinely asked the question. Yes, it's very true. I've been stopped 3 times. I've been detained twice for no reason whatsoever. It's absolutely true. And, you know, she was just blown away because as a Democrat, she just didn't want to believe that to be true. You know, that's just not how this world is. Yeah, the world is that way. So I'm saying all that to circle back to, you know, how do I navigate this? I've been blessed with a very successful business. My business principles are consistent with my life principles. How I treat people, how I look at people allows me to be the best version of myself and allows them to be the best version of themselves. When that happens, you have magic. When you can bring out the best in people, because we all have it, you have an opportunity to bring out the best in yourself. But if we're living in fear, if we're living in these prejudged times that this is what Trump said, or this is what they said, if we're living off of that, if that's how we're constructing our life, you're not gonna have a chance, because you're not living in truth. You're living in this perception of what has been told. And it doesn't mean that there's not truth within that. It just means that I'm gonna take that, I'm gonna understand it, I'm gonna put my truth as I know life into perspective and try to come up with a decision and move forward. But we need to understand those distinctions. If you wanna know people, if you wanna really grow, whether it's your business, your lifestyle, the things that make you who you are, the more diverse that you can become, the more enlightened you will become. I have some of the best experience in my life in my travels, going to Japan, going to Greece, going to Italy, just different parts of the world where they have preconceived notions of what Americans are like and what Black Americans are like. And none of that is bad. It's not. It's just what people have. But once you open up and you are comfortable enough to be in the moment and to allow people to be who they are, and you are who you are, man, you'll just have the best time ever, because there's no judging. It's just living. And that's where we need to be. And I personally am working on various committees with the governor, with the city, with various groups, to try to push that in motion, to allow people to know who they are. And trust me, this is the conversation that is relevant for all people. It's relevant for all people. We come from different worlds. We have to wake up and understand the value and the truth, the ugly, the misleaded that happens in everyone. But if we want to make a difference, just pay attention. Pay attention to who you're being in various circumstances. If one group scares you, ask yourself why. If you don't understand, don't come to your own conclusion as to why you don't get it. Ask, talk about it, have conversations. And like I said, just like I know every type of person, I know you do too. If you're honest with yourself, you know people that are racist, you know people that are stupid, you know people that make bad decisions. Come on, if you say you don't, you're lying to yourself. Everybody knows it. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's who you're being when you're around those people. Are you that person to enlighten them, to help them see more clear? Or are you part of the problem that gives them the authority to continue to think the way they do? You got to make that decision. No one can make that decision but you. But at the end of the day, that decision will determine who's part of the problem and who's part of the solution. I love Portland. I've been here forever. As I said, I have some amazing friends from every walk of life. And I believe that that's what enriches me. If you've ever seen me in the Pearl, you might not recognize me, but you'll recognize me with a cigar in my mouth, because that's what I do. I hang on the top of the Irving Street Lofts, and we have a good time. I've been there for a long time. But I just want to give you that. I want to give you a little something to consider. And again, I can go so many directions, whether it's education, whether it's corporate, whether it's social. I mean, when it comes to Blackness in this country, like I said, I've seen it all. I've been in it all. I made good decisions, bad decisions, but I am available to ask any questions. If there's anything that you struggle with, if there's anything that you've experienced that you just don't understand, you now have the floor to ask. And I want you to know that this is not about right or wrong, or who's twisted or who's not. This is about seeking to understand what's going on, how this world is working, how you fit into this. And you have the opportunity to ask those hard questions if you so choose. And I'm available to answer. So with that, Judie, I'm going to put that out for anyone.
Okay. Thanks, William. So if you want to ask a question, if you'll please use the participants, and then Bill will have the visibility to see how they come in order. They'll go in the order of the raised hands. And
I do have a first question actually from someone.
Okay, so if you'll call out their name and
Sure.
then, thank you.
Yeah, Linda, and I will unmute you if you don't unmute yourself, but you had pushed a question to me, and I think it'd be a great question for the group. I'm going to ask you to unmute. Linda EML. I'm not sure what that means, but. Okay.
I don't.
I'm going to ask you to unmute. Okay, well, we'll come back to you, Linda, on that question.
She looks unmuted.
Yeah.
Can you hear us, Linda?
No. Okay.
May I speak?
Sure. Go ahead.
My name is Claudine, and I grew up in a town of 4,000 people in southeastern Washington. We were an all-white population, and I didn't know anybody of a different race or nationality even. So I didn't learn discrimination. I never met a Black person until I moved to Chicago. And I'm a person who just believes in fairness. And I work for Armor Dial, and like probably 60% of the people in our plant were Black. And if I discriminated, it was because I loved what I was being exposed to. I loved, they invited me to the pension parties, and I loved, I mean, I saw that it was a different culture, and I was naive enough to think that's all I was experiencing.
Love it.
I just didn't learn it.
And you know, this is the thing. Being isolated, being separate from groups doesn't make you uninformed or a bad person or ignorant, or certainly doesn't make you racist. It just is your environment. And I could truly say that, and I thank you for that, because that is so representative of so many.
I want to clarify, I didn't feel like I was a bad person.
Right. And I'm sure you weren't, and I can see that. And you know, sometimes this is, you know, when racism gets so twisted, at least the way it is today, you know, sometimes people mistake racism or prejudice for just a bad day or a bad moment or a stupid thing that one says. And again, we do that on both sides. So to be able to have discernment and to say, hey, you know, I don't know you, like Claudine was mentioning, say, I don't know you, but I can't judge you because I don't know you. I mean, there's truth in that. And guess what? People recognize that. They recognize that you really are a good person and you really have good intentions. And when that surfaces, you will be fine no matter where you go, no matter where you come from, because you didn't have a reason to think differently. And, you know, a lot of people have that benefit, I call it a benefit, not to have their ideals sabotaged at a young age, not to be in environments where they're told things based on hate or based on somebody's opinion. And that's how they form their life. We're blessed when we're either raised by good parents are raised in an environment that allows us to see the world from a very pure perspective. We're not all that fortunate. And I do believe that a lot of people that have challenges, if you track back, they have personal issues, and this is how it shows up. And that really, you know, it can be very disturbing and it gets in the way. But there's a lot of layers to that. And I can talk all night about those different layers. But thank you for sharing that.
William, we have a question from Frank.
Okay.
Frank, go ahead, you're unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me?
I
Yes, we
can.
Excellent. Well, first of all, thank you very, very much. It's nice to meet you.
Thank you.
And I can understand why you were high school president. And I can imagine you've got a great future. Well, let me just get right down to what I want to ask. I'll just tell you that my wife and I have lived in the Pearl since 2004. Just been here 16 years now.
Wow.
We live in Park Place. We moved up here from the Bay Area. We've lived in New York. We've lived in Boston. We've lived in big cities. I have a sister who lives in Chicago, and we go there a lot.
And we were raised in a small town.
Yeah, we were raised, in a small town in Northern California. So that's enough. But I'm very concerned about the issue of policing in Portland. And you raised personal experience, which sounds very familiar. And I'd like you to speak just briefly to what you see as what the situation really is with the Portland Police Bureau, and if you have any ambitions about making it better, not just for Blacks, but for everybody. I'd like to hear a little bit about that.
Sure. Thanks. That's a great question. Yeah, I'm very much involved. The ex-police chief that's now in Philadelphia, Daniel Outlaw, is a personal friend. I know the new police chief, just briefly. I'm also on the board of SEI. I don't know if you're familiar with self-enhancement, but I'm a board member on that. And I only say that because I'm very involved with a lot of leaders around the city. So this whole thing about, again, you know, you think of the essence, you think of the start of what brought this to be, this horrific death of George Floyd. And then we saw different aspects of craziness that has been happening and has been made aware to the country as a whole of abuse, of neglect, of very, very bad policing. And we know it exists, but we also know that there's a positive element. We know that, everybody knows that. But there's a bad element. It's a bad element. I absolutely think that when you have a bad element, you have to work to get it out. You have to think about restructuring. You have to understand what are the causes that would allow that element to take place. It's no different if you're a business owner or a manager and you have a bad employee. It's like, if I have a bad employee, do I keep them there just because they do something very well? Or are their actions overpowering their worth? Well, I think all across the country, the actions of a lot of police are overpowering their worth. In other words, they need to be out. They need to go. Do I think that's a consequence of defunding? Absolutely not. I don't believe you want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think you want to understand how to restructure effectively. Just to defund, let's say that I say instead of having 1,000 cops on the street, now I can only have 700. Well, what does that do if we're not managing the people, the issues that are causing these problems, if we're not looking at that, if we're not understanding the type? Now, I have friends on the police force. They call me through this whole process. So frustrated, so worn out. These guys were working 19 hours a day, 20 hours a day for 3 or 4 weeks straight. Beat down, everybody abusing them. Mostly white, by the way. and they feel like I can't do this. Well, it's kind of like we knew something had to happen. I didn't ever think it would happen like this. In all my life, I've seen a lot of riots, but they were always singular. They're always Black, right? I never saw this mix. So now things are happening, and it's creating a very high level of frustration. So now it's time to think. So when I talk to a lot of these cops, one of the first things that they will say, because we do have honest conversations, is there's absolutely bad guys on the force. There's guys that we know should not be there. Okay, so what do we do now that we know this? It's not like it's just a aha moment. They knew this before. They know this all over the country. It's not about knowing that it exists. It's about allowing it to continue and what you need to do in order to restructure a program that allows for those types of elements to be identified and pulled out of the fray. Policing, that's a conversation that goes back to the start of this country. And the structure of that police is more of a structure of power to be used as the government needs it to be used. And so it's really gone down a path of disconnect, dysfunction. And that's what needs to be looked at. That's how we need to approach this is, again, how are we allowing these elements to happen, especially if we know who this is, if we can identify it. And I am here, I know it as sure as I'm looking at everybody's face. If you have a group of people, you're able to identify who's what in that group. The good, the bad, the smart, the shy, the whatever. You know, or you also know this is the person that will be causing some mess. This person is a problem. He's a problem. But I don't think it's my place to say anything about it. Well, as I said earlier, then you're the problem. So we have to drill into this. I think, again, I think the defunding issue came from a very aggressive and frustrating point of view. I think if anyone really thought through it and thought through the consequence of defunding, they probably backspin pretty quick. Does that answer your question, or was there something else, Ken, that you wanted me to talk about or to address?
Frank?
Oh, Frank.
Frank, did you hear him?
He's muted.
Okay, yeah, thanks. I guess I'm really more specifically interested in Portland.
Yeah.
Is there anything that we can do? You know, everybody who's been in here for any while used to know that, you know, you could, if you needed a policeman, you just go to Starbucks. At Lovejoy.
Yeah.
So it's been a benign experience for us, but what we're seeing and hearing, especially with the use of force against protesters, we have had a recent change in the leadership of the police department here. Do you have any thoughts that are specific to Portland or specific to the people who are here listening to you today about anything that we can do to support your view of what would be a healthier police force within the city?
Excellent. Yeah, to show your concern, to write to the mayor. I've actually written to the mayor and shared my perspective and concern, and he actually responded. Could do the same with the governor. There's multiple task force and committees that are being formed at this particular time that are there to analyze what's going on and to make decisions as to how this is going to move forward. It is showing support, but it's also showing, I ask for your support, but to show that your concern is to eliminate this issue and the consequences of what is happening here. And while we have, Portland's done a good job in some areas. Let me give you an example. Portland does have a regulation, or an internal policy is probably the better word, that if a police officer has 3 violations, then they're pulled off their duty. They're pulled out and they're put into, I don't know all of the details of what happens, but they're no longer allowed to go out until they go through a revived process of validating that they know what the hell they're doing. Now, what I know is that's unique. That's a Portland thing. So there's a lot of things that I'm saying that Portland is doing that very few cities are doing. However, there still is holes in police officers that have done things and that have gone to other areas and continue to excel.
Mhm.
And those types of problems should not exist. Those are the things that we need to voice our opinion about. If you have violated someone's rights, if you've had a number of incidents that identifies you as being unable to handle your job effectively, then you need to come off that job. And we just need to continue to promote that. So again, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I don't think it makes sense to defund. I think it makes sense to restructure and to look at the element and look at who's running it and what power they have to make the best decision. So the new chief, he jumped into this. He doesn't really want to be there, I don't think. Who does? Who wants to be a police chief these days? But he's here and he's going to step up, and I think he's going to do a great job. It's just showing support, as a neighborhood association, right? Maybe someone writing a letter saying, we are behind making the city great. Again, we want to know how you are planning on reallocating, restructuring, reformatting your program so that you can better identify the bad apples or the people that aren't up to par. The more that we can be on one accord, I think the more that it will benefit us all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
William, I have a question from Glenn, who's a
Yes.
board member and a committee member.
Yeah, you probably have noticed that there's a lot of older white people here in the Pearl District Neighborhood Association. But that doesn't mean that we aren't trying to be a more diverse group. So can you give us some tips on what we can do to attract more diversity in our group? People of color, different incomes, different ages, based on your.
Yeah, that's a great question, and thank you for asking. I am on the board of the PD, the Pearl District Business Association. I didn't know that. Yeah, I can't be on too many boards, but there's some great individuals of color that are in the Pearl, and I don't know how you go about it. What I could do is, if I see and hear someone that may be interested, that you may be interested in, I can certainly forward them to you. I know some very, very strong business owners that live in the Pearl, business owners of color, both male and female. So yes, I think that's smart. And again, I'm engaged. I'm on the 13th Street Committee. We're reformatting, how 13th is going to look. Very involved. And I would love to see more diversity. I think it's just good. I think, we need diversity. We need the wisdom of people that are in the, in the 60s, 70s, whether they're white, whether they're black. That's where you get the power, especially if it comes with a pure heart. So we need that, and the Pearl needs that. And trust me, I've been on a lot of situations where I have seen the being comfortableness of the Pearl kind of get in the way of progress. So that's what comes along with being open, is that you're also allowing new ideas to come in. And that's usually, where people get in trouble, right? I want you here, but I want you here under my parameters. So we want to be, very open to what that represents, and to allow people to truly express themselves and show their value and their intellect and their wisdom and their creativity, and to bring that value to the Pearl District in a way that benefits everybody. So yes, I would be more than happy to do that. Any of you, feel free to reach out to me, ask questions, ask for referrals, or what have you. I'd be more than happy to connect those dots for you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, William. Let's take one more question and then we'll need to get into our program. This is an important topic and I wish we had much more time, but
We have
I
one
know
more.
some.
We've got a few questions. The next person up is Aaron. You are unmuted. Go ahead.
Hi, William. I'm Erin Olivia. I'm one of the residents here. And I actually have two questions, which are each very different. But one question is, what concrete action steps can we take collectively as a community to support Black business and Black communities in Portland?
Okay. There are many groups, Black business groups that come together. I think knowing some of those entities. Do any of you know Stephen Green? All right, Stephen is he's a very good friend. He runs or is part of the Pitch Black initiative, which is all new entrepreneurial Black businesses and startups in Portland. I can send you a link to that. These are some amazing businesses, very successful from all walks of the business spectrum, all walks. And so, yes, to engage with, and I mean, I'm impressed with some of these new young entrepreneurs that are coming up. I mean, ultra smart, very educated, very valuable, and we need to get them involved. We do. I mean, just for so many reasons. So feel free to reach out to me. I will send you a few links of these organizations that not only are looking for support, but looking to engage in other groups. So I appreciate that. Was there a second question?
There was. Thank you for the answer. I can't wait to hear that list.
Absolutely.
And my second question is, as you're working on your committees and whatnot with leadership, with the police and everything, has there been any talk or ideas about extending into relationships with the labor movement, Jobs with Justice? Because I think that's where unions, like I'm in a union, and we're forming a statement and taking a stand that we want to separate from the police union. We don't want to be associated with them. And so I know that it's the union membership that really keeps a lot of those bad apples, as you say, in place or rehired. And I feel like, can we partner with the labor movement, who I've heard people at our events say, gosh, they're really making us look bad. Like, we do not want to be part of this.
Yeah, I haven't really gone down that road, and it's more because I've been pushed in so many different directions. But I would think that that's not only a viable conversation to have, it's just something that I haven't touched personally. As far as labor unions. The focus truly has been, in government reform and trying to, work through the corporate infrastructure of how people are being brought in. I mean, and again, as you can imagine, there's so many layers and so many directions that this can go. But I can tell you, and again, I am more than happy to put myself out there because I can connect those dots. I do know people in the city government and from the corporate side of business as well that could probably address that better than I. So I would, again, be more than happy to connect those dots for you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Judy,
you.
if I could just say real quick before everybody parts, we will over the next, by this weekend, have a page up on our website, and we will have a recording of tonight's talk from William, as well as the links that he'll share with us as well, all put together in one place. And it will be a page that we'll come back to and add to, but we will at least have the things that we've talked about tonight gathered together in a page by this weekend.
That's fantastic. And one thing that you might want to do, I mean, and I see such enthusiasm and willingness to be a part of this our new reality in so many ways. There are quite a few Black businesses in the area. I've been in the Pearl since 2000. I'm a Black business. I don't know how many of you know who I am. And I do say that I work with a lot of companies all over Oregon, right? I mean, I work with large dealerships. Our clients are people that you would know. But the point of that is that that does exist, right? There's a lot of Black businesses. And so, if you want to show support, saying, as the PD&A, we support our Black business partners. Here's a list of who they are. Here's their contact. Let's show that support. I mean, that's something that I think is beneficial. And even if you don't put the names out, just show support. We support all businesses, right? From all walks, but we're certainly here to let businesses know that's been here for a while, that we see you, and that you are relevant. I mean,
Yes.
how can you be here for 20 years and not be seen, And so it's like, I think that would be great. I think that would show a lot of positivity and awareness of what's going on right now.
An important point you've made, we see you. William, can't thank you enough. I feel like this is an ongoing conversation. I feel like this is just the beginning of learning more, how we can make a contribution. Very grateful for your time. And you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. You don't need to leave, but if you need to, you're excused if you wish.
I do, but I do want to thank you for allowing me to spend this extended time, because it's much longer than I think any of us expected. But I do want you to know, Judy, anybody who wants my information, feel free to give it to them. My email
Definitely.
At my website. Feel free to reach out. If questions might be a little more sensitive than you want to share on this forum, feel free to reach out to me. Talk to me. Let's have real conversations. I'll tell you how I feel, right? It's all it is. I'll give you that.
That's great.
But that's where we need to be. That's where we need to be as a people. So
We do.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
So much. You guys are amazing. I appreciate your time, and I will leave you to your business at hand.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.